Today we're in a church, talking about a Baptist minister. We're also going to be remaking a key that was used to lock him into an Alabama jail. This video is about breaking the rules. Martin Luther King Jr. said, "One has a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws." Hi, I'm Gabriel. This channel is all about the stories of some great people, where I make projects and search for that bit of wisdom that set these people apart. Check them out and leave me a comment. You could also like and subscribe to see more. He was born Michael King originally in 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia. Today, we would consider his household to be violent and his upbringing to have been abusive. He and his brother and sister were regularly whipped and were encouraged to whip each other. And yet, despite this, King's spirit was not cowed. He continued to break the rules. And he also had a lively understanding of justice, and he was both willing to receive it and to deal it out. On one occasion, King witnessed his brother picking on his sister, so he knocked him out with a telephone. And on another occasion where King and his brother had an altercation which resulted in their grandmother being knocked over, King's resulting justice was, of course, to throw himself out of a 2-story window. His grandmother, of course, survived, but thankfully, so did Michael King. His first taste of racism was when he was just 6. His neighbours banned him from playing with their white son. His parents then had to explain to him the history of slavery and black people in America, remaining firm on their Christian values of loving everyone. But young Michael King couldn't accept this. He was determined to hate all white people. But alongside King's anger was something else that he wrestled with his entire life. He realised that anger must not be internalised, but channeled to achieve something, or it would destroy him. Hate, he declared, is too great a burden to bear. Therefore, despite segregation, the acts of racism against him, the fact that he had to give up his white girlfriend because history just wasn't ready for it, despite the black lives that were being blighted all around him, when he began his boycott on the bus and the protests, they were done with non-violence. Non-violence, he said, means avoiding not only external physical violence, but also internal violence of spirit. You not only refuse to shoot a man, but you refuse to hate him. But refusing to hate did not mean refusing to fight, and nor did it mean passively complying with rules. Martin Luther's passion for justice placed him in opposition to a great many rules and laws. He would either simply break them or organise mass gatherings in opposition to them, where he and his followers would simply stand and protest whilst facing violence and arrest. This trend led to massive media coverage, ever-increasing levels of support, and to the peaceful acceptance of horrific injustice and ill treatment. Even child protesters were at times subjected to police dogs, water cannons, and there were mass arrests. In the course of his life, King was arrested 29 times. In his own unquestionable style, he broke laws, but did not protest the punishment that was given. When he was given ways to avoid his sentence, he wouldn't comply. And of course, in Birmingham, Alabama, he suffered his 13th arrest. From that jail where he was locked away with this key, or similar, he wrote his famous letter arguing for consistently breaking the rules, breaking the laws, and using jail to further their cause. After all, freedom is never voluntarily given by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. And while the celebrated Boston Tea Party rebellion was illegal, what Hitler did was not illegal. For Martin Luther King, one has a moral responsibility to break unjust laws. But he was not advocating a life of lawlessness. Rather, if we want to effect change, we must learn to break the rules and accept the consequences. We can then simply watch and wait as the tide turns in our favour. Therefore, the greatest opposition to the path of justice and to the turning of the tide against racism is not the Ku Klux Klanner who oppresses it, but the moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace which is the absence of tension to a positive peace which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, "I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action," who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom. One of King's last campaigns was the March on Washington, where again, keeping to the rules was not high on the priority list, even from his own rules. When delivering his speech, he deviated from the cards. When somebody shouted out, "Tell them about the dream." And today, of course, this digression is considered to be the greatest speech in all US history. It helped put civil rights at the top of the agenda of reformers in the United States and facilitated the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And although this was the end for Martin Luther King, it was surely just the beginning of the end of racism in the US and around the world. If we want to follow in the footsteps of the great Martin Luther King Jr., then we need to be people who understand that we have a moral responsibility to disobey unjust laws.